the next topic, which is focused on hiring in cybersecurity world. And I have to say, I have to take this opportunity to remind the people in the audience today that the BC Public Service is hiring security analysts. I'm hiring security analysts. If you're looking for a job, come get at me. Or a lot of other CIOs in government would definitely be happy to have a conversation, because this is definitely something that we know we need to recruit for, and we're looking at talent and culture. So I just wanted to give a shout out to people listening. So as we go to the next topic, I want to welcome 3 speakers. The first is Iain Patterson. Hi, Iain. Iain is the CEO of Plurilock. I want to invite Jasmine Zellsar, Global Manager of Security and Risk Compliance at FinCat, and another Iain Patterson, the Chief Information Security Officer at Well Health. Hey. So first talking about the first Iain. Iain is an entrepreneur with 10 years of experience in leading and commercializing tech companies. He's raised more than 10 million or 15 million in private and public financing. He's completed international transactions and acquisitions. He's a co-inventor of 3 patents. He's often referred to as an unconventional thinker. Iain is a regular speaker, author, media commentator, and active angel investor. Welcome, Iain. Moving along to Jasmine Zellsar. She's the Global Manager in Security Risk and Compliance at Finning. She has more than 20 years of experience in information tech, risk management, regulatory compliance, governance, and assurance spanning various industries. She has a number of certifications, including the Certified Information Systems Auditor and she's certified in Risk and Information Systems Controls, and definitely has a few certs from ITIL, so welcome. And then the other Iain Patterson, who has been a cybersecurity practitioner for more than 20 years. He's currently the CISO of Well Health Technology, a multinational healthcare conglomerate whose EMR applications and solutions operate in more than 2,000 clinics in Canada. And Iain was previously the CEO of Secura. It's a boutique testing firm, and he's also been the Director of Security Operations at eHealth Ontario, and he's built security programs in hospitals and banks far and wide. He also has an MBA from Athabasca. So with that, I want to turn it over to you all for the next topic. Welcome, and just a reminder to unmute yourselves as you go.
Well, thank you. We're very excited. So our topic today, we're going to be talking predominantly around hiring, but the reason that myself, my better looking colleague there, Iain Patterson, and Jazmin are here are because all 3 of us have had a very different journey getting to where we are today. And we're also, similar to yourself, Savannah, we're also all hiring. And so I think as a result of this, we're able to kind of speak to both how we've managed to get here, but also what we're looking for in others as they're entering the workforce. So we're going to kind of go a little bit more faster paced, and so I may jump in and try and keep things moving, because I think that there's a number of sound bites that I'm excited to get into. Definitely happy to address questions if folks want to drop them into the chat. I think that we can see them. I'm not quite sure, but in any case, we're happy to leave some time for questions at the end. So with that, why don't we get started? And maybe we can start with Jasmine. So where are you now in terms of your career? What are you focused on? And we'll kind of use that as a base, and then we'll dive in with some additional questions thereafter.
For sure. Good morning, everybody. Where am I? Well, I am leading the security risk and control compliance practice as part of Finning. We are the biggest dealership for Caterpillar, so those big yellow machines, hence why you see all that yellow over there. What I've been doing is pretty much collaborating with everybody in the business, asking the hard questions about what can go wrong when we look into implementing a new solution of whatever, call it hardware, software, anything that the business is thinking of. My role is pretty much to bring this so what if things go wrong in this conversation, and making sure that they think about how much they're exposing themselves and ourselves as a company when they're trying to bring something into the environment, to think about, how are we going to control the security of this application, the access, the configurations, how much are we opening ourselves to the internet and the potential threats out there. So that's pretty much what I'm currently doing right now.
Perfect. Same question to you, Iain. What does your day look like today? Where are you now?
I'm in Mexico at a resort. My day's pretty casual, but I think you're asking about my work days. Yeah, so I just changed roles. Well Health Technologies was a client actually of Psycura that I used to lead until very recently, and we were doing a lot of M&A work for them. So that's a company that really grows through acquisition. It describes themselves as a conglomerate. And so when we're doing acquisitions, we're really assuming a lot of risk that other companies have previously built up, or technical debt that they've accrued. And so when you're doing due diligence, you're trying to assess, where is that company from an operating perspective in terms of just what Jasmine said, exposure to the internet and, the data that they are supposed to be protecting and storing. How do you manage all of that appropriately? So a lot of my energy and effort in this new role is focused very heavily around making sure that across all the different entities within Well, because there's many of them now, there's been about 30 acquisitions in the last 2 years, trying to implement as much as you can a uniform security program, security practice.
Okay, so really interesting, because I think what the risks that you both face are very different, but also, it sounds like fairly large. I'll say for myself, at Plurilock, we are a vendor, so we provide cybersecurity solutions to our customers, and so we also have risk, but ours is almost supply chain risk, in the sense that we don't want to be the folks who get compromised that could then lead to our customers being compromised. So interesting. So the commonality here, all three of us were dealing with risk, but kind of different types of risk and different variations. Jasmine, let's go back to you. So really quickly, what was the career trajectory that you followed to get to where you are today? Was it college, certifications, practical experience, kind of what were the hops that arrived you at your current destination?
So I went to university, and in Mexico that was, and I had a bachelor of something like the closest thing that I can translate it to the Canadian education will be a bachelor degree on managed information services. So I went, 9 semesters, so 4 years and a half, and I was hired immediately after graduation to join Deloitte, a consulting firm, and I was doing IT audit for a number of years. So I, started escalating throughout all that, all the different positions within Deloitte, all the way to become a senior manager, doing not only IT audits, but pretty much risk for technology, and doing compliance, SOC work, all those type of things. Then as I was there, I also managed to get a couple of certifications with ISACA, which are the CISA and the C-RISC. And I guess what I could say is, because I was in a consulting firm, every single project was different. So I got exposed to different industries, different things. Everything in the end was risk, but it was seen in a different lens because of how different those clients were. Then from there, I moved to do operational risk management at ATB Financial, which is a financial institution here in Alberta. And then I moved to do IT risk with Finning. So pretty much standard. I went to college, and then I managed to just get a job, and then from there move around.
But it sounds like, so you started in Mexico, went to college, did management consulting at Deloitte, went into banking, and then ended up in construction manufacturing, with a few certificates along the way.
Yes.
Interesting. Iain, how about you?
Almost went through the whole process backwards. Barely graduated high school, I would say. Not an honor student. Didn't go to college, university. Got accepted to university, but for English, and didn't see a career for myself down at the old English factory. So I went into tech because I was strong in computer sciences. I grew up on bulletin boards and breaking into phone systems and stuff like that, stuff that would put you in jail these days. That's what we were doing with modems when we were kids.
I think in theory you could have gone into jail back then too. It's not like there were new laws.
Yeah, they just didn't know what we were doing really back then. So I pivoted that into a career in IT. I started working in a reseller. I did all the Microsoft certifications that were in vogue back in the early 2000s. And that landed me in a couple different reseller type organizations, working in a lot of different clients, different exposure to different networks and stuff like that. This was early IT, and to be honest, like it was a bit of a mess, and security was kind of an afterthought to everything. And then one of the banks scooped me up, TD. I went in there, did server engineering because that was my background at that point. And then security team scooped me up, and I worked there for nearly 8 years. Built out a massive vulnerability management program, one of the biggest in North America at the time. And then I just found the pace in the bank to be a little glacial at times, as happens in a lot of big organizations. It can get kind of frustrating when you want to move fast and change things. So I took a chance and moved over to a hospital. I was the CISO of a hospital for 4.5 years. Incredibly different than being in a bank. In a bank, you have kind of like two of everything. In the hospital, they're like, here's some stuff, good luck. And I was like, where's the documentation? They're like, we don't have it. So learned how to do a lot with very little there. You learn how to think on your feet. Great experience, though, and great people. And then after that, Director of Security Operations for an organization called eHealth Ontario, which is the kind of central repository for health records in the province of Ontario. So I was responsible for all your health records for a while. And then joined Secura as the first Canadian employee 7 years ago. Secura, boutique penetration testing firm. Just like Jasmine said, every project slightly different, every company very different. We've worked with companies like Iain's company, making sure their product is A-OK, all the way up to large enterprises like the Loblaws of the world or companies like Cineplex. And so assessing the technical security of all those different organizations. And so that exposure to seeing how different organizations have built applications or networks, or they're trying to put together two systems or share data or something like that. That was incredible, and I really do encourage everybody, to do some time in consulting, because I just think it gives you, a real better perspective on what's going on out in the world of IT, so to speak. People have legacy systems that they've cobbled together over the years, and then you got to help them figure out how to protect that. And then you have a lot of companies today, kind of like Plurilock, where it's like it's all cloud, right? There's very little back end type stuff. So that was an amazing experience for the last 7 years. And now at Well, it's like I said, a conglomerate of a bunch of different companies we've acquired.
So would it be fair to say that, Jasmine, I mean, it sounded like you were hands on keyboard earlier in your career, but towards the latter half, certainly it's much more risk based. It's less about configuring a firewall and more about asking a question around risk. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I'm dangerous enough to challenge, what the different areas are trying to do, but just now put it a spin on the what can go wrong from a risk perspective. Sure. Yep.
And then it sounds like almost the opposite for you, Iain, right? You were hugely hands-on keyboard, hands-on modems, so very technical, and yet we've all ended up with significant career stops. I'll say myself. I mean, my track. So I was technical early on, similar to Iain. Barely graduated high school, did no post-secondary. Ended up touring with rock and roll bands for a while, and then sort of fell into tech companies and specifically around data and analytics, and then parlayed the data and analytics capability that I developed into data and analytics for cybersecurity applications, which is functionally what Plurilock is. So no certs, no degrees, but certainly a lot of experience, and so. I guess 3 different perspectives. Okay. All right. So let's go into now the hiring. So personally, we are hiring for, I mean, as a software company and as a cybersecurity vendor, we are hiring people who have cybersecurity expertise. We are also hiring software developers because we have software, and maybe those software developers have cyber experience. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're just tremendous coders and we kind of teach them the cyber angle, or maybe it's vice versa. Maybe they're tremendous cyber people and we kind of we work towards building more software development expertise. Just big picture, and then we'll go into specific questions. So big picture, Jasmine, what are the types of roles that you are hiring either recently or expect to be hiring in the future? Like, what are the types of people that you're looking out for?
Currently, we're hiring for a security architect. So pretty much helping designing what we're trying to build in the company. So that is one of the positions, and it's been, boy, a good 4 months. That like literally, we hired somebody and it took for that person to get here forever. We got that person, and then since the market is so hot, we lost them to Amazon. It is what it is. So from that moment, we're still hiring, and it's been like 4 months. I spent the other one that I just recently hired was a security awareness person. That took me 9 months to get.
Wow.
The market is quite something.
I agree. Iain, just big picture, what sort of roles have you hired for recently, like in the last 12, 24 months? And then do you have expected hires that you're going to have to make the next little while?
Yeah, we've been hiring for security researchers on the Secura side of things, project managers, hugely important when you are running a consultancy, salespeople, always need to bring the money in to do the projects, right? So, and then on the well side of things, I need to hire a GRC person pretty immediately to help me build out the program. So, yep.
So that's interesting. So you're hiring a cybersecurity person who is focused on sales. So would that salesperson have had to understand cybersecurity? Would they have had to be able to break into systems? What qualifications would that person have had to have?
No, you don't have to have sold cybersecurity before. And I think if people have come from the background of selling like a product or something like that, then sometimes it's kind of hard to deprogram that product type thinking. Really, it's just about fit for the organization and showing that you actually do have some sort of real passion for this particular industry. Because when you do consulting type sales, like you have to sit down with the business and ask them about how everything works within that organization and what it is that they're trying to protect and why it's important to them, and then be able to give them meaningful answers. Not just point them at the magic blinking box, right? So really, we're looking for somebody that can problem solve and be consultative in their approach when it comes to selling, not just somebody that's out to smash numbers or something like that.
Right.
Obviously, there's room for both in this industry, though.
Fair. Let's go through and we'll just kind of do kind of more of a rapid fire series of questions. If you were hiring a junior person into the organization, and you can take your pick of what specific role that person would have, whether SOC analyst, junior salesperson, whatever, in a cybersecurity context. What are one or two characteristics that you're going to look for when you're hiring more junior folks? And we'll start with you, Iain, then we'll go back to you, Jasmine.
When we're hiring junior people, real example, like we've hired junior security researchers who honestly didn't come from a cybersecurity background. One of them I was saying this in the chat, one of them came from the cannabis industry. And that the company they were at had been closed, and then they pivoted their career and they started doing certifications in our area, specifically like offensive security type stuff. And so we took a chance on them. We put them through a practical test and said, hey, show us that you have skills. And they passed that practical test and they were able to articulate the work that they had done. And that was great. So nice. Really, it's finding people that, like I said, they have a passion for it, but they can also display that passion is more than just, I think computers are exciting. That they can actually do some of the work that's meaningful in the space, right? It's a
Sure.
display of skills. And we do the same thing for project managers. We ask them to write up a case study. right? We'll give them the sample outputs from some work and we'll say, turn this into a report, right? What does that look like to you so that we can qualify them? So
nice. So Jasmine, same question, and maybe to preface it, if you can think of a more of a junior role, either that you have hired recently or you've onboarded recently. I mean, what are some of the characteristics that a junior person might have to separate themselves from another candidate?
Putting the technical skill on the side, I would say passion and drive. I learned a lot on my years on Deloitte. We hire people fresh out of college, and they probably just have the knowledge that they get through university. But then it's the fact that if they have the drive and the passion, and if they're actually also somebody who is attentive to detail, that helps a lot with the work that we do, and just being curious about things, because that gets the conversation going about the so what and what can we break and how we can fix it, sort of thing. So I take a lot on teaching them the skill side and guiding them through the professional growth. What I'm looking for is somebody who can actually come in and put the effort on it.
What would you expect that junior person to show in the first year or two? So if they're starting, they squeak into that entry level role, what would they need to then show to kind of get to the next level in their career? We'll go opposite way, Jasmine, and then back to Iain.
Again, the passion for it, and that they're also very good at taking feedback and apply it to the next thing. So that's something big. And of course, that they continue learning. It's sort of like, it's not only whatever you expose them to, is that they actually have the interest of going and searching for something, and so they can get better at it.
Iain?
Yeah, I mean, I want somebody to come in and sit down and tell me that they want my job or the job of their boss, or that's what I want them to tell me when they come and say, this is what I want to do in the next 5 years. Great. Like, how do we do that for you, right? Because I want to always be moving people up and into exciting roles, or doing things that are interesting to them. A real success story. We just did one of our researchers, we were doing a project. So this is a guy who came out of a different industry. He was doing software development, so tertiary to this, but had never done security before. Self-studied, did some offensive security stuff. We hired him. Just this past week, we sent a vulnerability disclosure based on some research that he did to a company here in British Columbia, actually. And he's going to get his first CVE published out of that, right? So piece of real research. His name associated with that vulnerability for all time. And that's amazing. This is a guy who's only been in the industry for like a year and a half sort of thing. That's the kind of drive that will get you into a senior security researcher, security research leader type role. And, that will make you invaluable in this industry. So those kind of demonstrations. And it could be anything, even as a project manager or something like that. Reinvent how we do processes, right? Find some sort of way to improve upon what we're doing, right? Don't just sit back and kind of do the bare minimum.
Also sounds like a terrific work environment in that you've supported that person and able to, actually give them that opportunity. So I think we've got, I see, based on Savannah's coming off of coming back on video. Apparently we have maybe 1 or 2 minutes left. Why don't we go around? Maybe last comment. There's a number of questions that I've seen specifically around junior folks coming straight out of university, straight out of college. Maybe one piece of advice, just as a parting word, one piece of advice, new grad coming out of the education system, going into the workforce. What would you tell them? And then we'll wrap up with that. Jasmine?
Even if you see the posting and you think that you may not be able to be a great fit, go for it. You don't know what we're actually going to go for when we see the pool of applicants.
I think that's great advice. I think the other thing I would say too is put together a portfolio of work that you've done that's outside of, if you did something cool during the course, like a project or something like that, put that together as a portfolio, put together a Git, library of your own or something like that. Show us what you can do, right? And that will make us consider you more seriously than just your resume.
Totally agree. And I think the common trend that I'm hearing from all of these answers is that it's about initiative, enthusiasm, drive. Notice how we've not said anything about technical skills. I mean, those are important. At some point, you have to be able to do the job, but being able to show that you want to do something and that you're willing to put in the effort actually just goes a huge long way. I will say just very quickly personal story. Early on in my career, I had an opportunity to meet a company that I was wholly unqualified to work for. So similar to what you were saying, Jasmine. In that first meeting, they described a problem and they needed a new phone system. And so between the first meeting and the follow-up meeting, I built a full PBX system and went and said, look, I heard there was a problem in the last meeting, and as a result, I rolled out this voice over IP system, PBX. Let me demo it for you. And so we actually called the phone in the second meeting, and that ultimately landed a job offer. And so again, had nothing to do with my resume, which was basically totally blank at that time, but it had everything to do about actually showing people what was possible. So Savannah, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you for the opportunity. This was really, I appreciate being able to give back. I am available on LinkedIn. I know Iain's available on LinkedIn, and I know Jasmine's also available on LinkedIn. So should anybody have follow-up questions, we're always happy to chat. And if you want to work in the private sector as opposed to the public sector, and you don't want to work with Savannah, all three of us are happy.
Thank you, Iain and Jasmine, for your time and sharing your experience. I love to hear about the zigzag in the career. And again, as Iain said, interest, attitude, and aptitude is definitely what I heard, and just a smidge of hustle, right, in terms of creativity, and that can definitely get people where they want to be. So thank you for your time.